The quality of being the only one of its kind. That's the definition of uniqueness. Uniqueness. What does that mean to you? To me, it's when people are totally different from one another. The world sometimes says in order to fit in, we must all be the same. But if we're all the same, nothing new will come out of life. Imagine coming to school every day and sitting next to another you. This may sound like a great and fun idea, but in the long run, we all chase the same dreams, have the same beliefs, and nothing new will come out of life. Being called unique isn't always said on a positive note. Sometimes your uniqueness may not be what you want to be remembered by. Everyone has their own story to tell, whether good or bad. The story we need to tell is what makes us unique. As Ryan Buchanan once said, you can't blend in when you were born to stand out. That means instead of trying to be like others, we should celebrate our differences. Being an individual is what creates the world. Let's celebrate our uniqueness and show ourselves to the world. By that, I mean stay true to yourself.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining me tonight on Real Talk with Jean Price. I'm so glad you tuned in, but we have real discussions, talk about real issues and real things that are happening in our world today. I want you to take this time to share. I want you to like. We also want you to subscribe to Real Talk. It's been really great on this journey of really meeting some phenomenal people. I also want to give a shout out to Antoinette Biordi, who had given me an opportunity to be on Channel 12 News Long Island, where we talked about what we do with Real Talk and what I do with women and girls. And I'm so excited. Again, she's just an amazing person. And that opportunity was just absolutely phenomenal. And the women that joined me on that show, I again want to say thank you to them as well. But tonight, we have such a wonderful show in store for you. This guest on the show tonight, I've had the opportunity to be a part of a wonderful event that she hosted back in 2022, and it was phenomenal. She's smart, she's brilliant. I mean, she's the kind of person, she's a life coach, she's dedicated to guiding individuals toward their fullest potential. She has a passion for witnessing to people, seeing people thrive, and it's just been absolutely wonderful watching her journey. And I love to call it a journey because the truth of the matter is we all have a story, right? But stories come about while you're navigating a journey, and that journey is called life. She's written an amazing book, which she's going to tell you a lot about herself, and we'll put the book up on the screen. But I want you to take the time to tell people to come and watch tonight and help me welcome to Real Talk with Jean Price, Jessica Toussaint, the author of Baby, You Got This. Jessica, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I love the way you said it.
Well, I had to put a little emphasis in there because I'm like, wait, you know why when I think about the title, it's just like, you know what? Yeah, I got this. But thank you, Jessica, for being on Real Talk. I'm so grateful for this opportunity to get to spend some time with you. And as I stated in my intro, again, thank you for even honoring me in 2022 for the work that I do with women and girls. But it's not about me tonight, so it's about you. Why don't you tell our viewing audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, thank you for having me today. I really appreciate it. So I am a life coach, a speaker, and I'm really passionate about people becoming their best version of themselves. As long as there's breath in our bodies, there's another version of us that's waiting to evolve. So I kind of help people to push people into that. I have a women's group and I do a bunch of other things, but I'm really passionate about seeing people become whoever God's called them to be.
So let's pivot right there. I think that's such a great intro. What kind of started you on this personal journey, and how did you even come up with the title of your book, Baby, You Got This?
Sure. So I remember I talk about this in the book that in life, as you get older, you're like, well, if I had this, then I'd feel enough. if I had the right job, the right house, the right circle, the right friends, the right husband, maybe I would feel self-sufficient. And for me, my journey started with my own self, right? And so I was very academic. My parents, I'm first generation Haitian American. So my parents were big on you need to get your books. That's your education is what's going to get you further, which I appreciate. But in it, I remember I would get a B and my parents would be like, next time, get an A. And so in it, it built in me some great work ethics, but I also started to suffer with perfectionism, right? And so in looking at that, I had to like start evaluating. When my dad passed away about 6-7 years ago, I started going to therapy and I thought I was going for grief. But God, sure enough, used it to kind of unlock the things that were in my heart. And I started to realize certain things I was doing may have been to people please, may have been to keep up appearances instead of really stepping into who I'm supposed to be. So the journey with helping others started with me, and dealing with my insufficiencies, dealing with my flaws and learning to navigate them. And then I don't know about you, but when you learn something, you want to share with everyone else, right? So when you're free or when you're like, this works, maybe you can try it. And then you can see people that have the same ailment as you because it was your struggle. So if you were an alcoholic, you can tell if someone's an alcoholic much quicker than I could, and then of course, again, when you have some sort of liberty or you learn a resource and a tool, I think each of us, it's our responsibility to share it, to pay it forward.
That's so good. Even as you were talking, Jessica, I thought about your book talks about self-discovery and empowerment. And it's so true what you said. When you do discover, when God gives you that light of how you are and who you are, you do want to share it. It's not even from a boastful perspective, but more like, I got to tell you how you can get through this.
Yes.
And I love that about you because you're right. That has been my passion to be like, wow, God allowed me to discover something about myself, but I want to show you how you can get the same thing. And I'm so grateful that you talked about it. And thank you for your transparency because you had to acknowledge the fact that there was flaws.
Oh, absolutely. And still flaws.
Because listen, none of us are perfect. Until the Lord comes, we're going to constantly be working on ourselves. But when you see a flaw and you're really willing to work on it, I think that is just absolutely phenomenal. And I got a question for you, but I thought about the man that sat at the gate beautiful, right? And the word of God says he wanted money, and he's saying to Peter, I need money. And he said, no, I don't have that to give you, but I can give you Jesus. And I think you saying what you're doing, like you're saying to people, no, I can give you something that has more value. Yeah. How do you value your life and where you are right now?
It's so true.
How do you value that?
So for me, I quantify things. Like I quantify now my time, my talent, because again, I had to look at what was my motive and my agenda. Was I doing this for myself, for accolades, so I could feel like I'm a superhero, or because this was making me feel like I was good enough, I should be at the table. And so now I assess, now looking at my value, it's changed how I show up in rooms. It's changed how I engage in relationships, right? Because I realized I don't have to get anything. I am it, but it took me years to really get to that perspective, and again, when you look at the relationships you have, if we really believed in ourselves, right, would we be in that relationship? Some of us may not be in that relationship. Some of us may have applied for a higher position in a job, right? Our value, it really becomes currency where we go. We are the reflection of how we value ourselves.
Yes. And, that lends itself to, in your book, when you talk about one's unique identity. Yes. That's good. Can you kind of elaborate on that a little bit when you define your identity in the book?
So when I talk about identity, right, it talks about so when we get to a certain age, people think, oh, you should have, where's the kid? When are you going to get married? It really frees us to realize our identity, right? Yes, it's rooted in Christ, but it's also in who we see who we are. We can't let people's opinions start to jade us. And there's some things inside of us that are unique. We're gifted. But what happens is we may be in a room with a bunch of chickens, but we're an eagle. And what happens is we start to shrink our perspective, our thoughts, and those pieces, unique, unique selling proposition. It's our unique point. It's what God gave us so that we have the witty invention, so that we have the hand up. But what happens is when we don't identify it, when we don't embrace it, we start to shrink ourselves, right? And we're looking for validation from people when we already have it. And so it's important that we really look at our identity. What is the foundation of that identity? And is it truth, right? Like we're feeling like I'm not good enough. Where did that come from? And what truth is it? Like what are you echoing? What took place? Hey, I tried to do this and it didn't happen. It may not be the time, but that does not mean what we do becomes our identity. So if you think of a doctor, yes, they have a gift of help. They help people, they change lives. But what happens when that doctor has to retire because their hands don't work? Does that now mean that doctor has no value? No. Now it's just you use the gift in a different fashion.
That was powerful. I want to go back to something you said, and I tell you, jumped out at me when you talked about identity. I mean, you talked about how we believe. It's so interesting how we always believe a lie, but we struggle with believing the truth.
It's so true.
You know what I mean? Or we always gravitate to the negative, and then we struggle with dealing with the positive. Why do you think? And I'm speaking from a woman's perspective, of course, because that's how low self-esteem comes about, right? It's just how everything you look in the mirror, you see the negative side. Oh, I'm fat. Oh, I'm this. Oh, I'm not as pretty. I'm not this. It's so easy to take ownership of a lie instead of taking ownership of truth. Why do you think that the mindset is like that?
Well, I think it's a few things. One thing, I think it's what we feed ourselves, right? So there's a scientist, there was a school that did a study, and I think it's over 50,000 thoughts run through our minds every day. So think of it like a cassette tape. So imagine if you're thinking negative half of that time, right? Subconsciously, right? Something happens, you're like, I didn't get the job. That feeds it, right? Whereas imagine what our lives would look like if we said, girl, you got this, girl. It didn't work out, but the next thing, God got a bigger door. I think it's also what happens in our childhood, right? So if we hear you're going to be just like your daddy, and your daddy was not so good,
right?
Some certain flaws, whether you realize it or not, those seeds are being planted. Right. And so we have to be intentional when we guard our ears, when we guard what we're receptive towards. But it is true. I think for some reason we do seem to take that. And I think the other piece is it's a hard time. A lot of us have a hard time taking compliments. Right. And someone says you're beautiful. You're like, so are you too. Just take the compliment. And say thank you.
That is so true. So, even as you were talking, and God bless you, Pastor Kim Batiste joined us tonight, Jessica. She's on.
Hi, Pastor Kim. I love
her. As you were talking, Jessica, you reminded me of my granddaughter, right? Morgan will be 13 in September. And you said something that was key. She has such confidence at 12 years old, not high-mindedness, but confidence, because her mom and her dad has been feeding her nothing but positive affirmations about herself. And I'm sitting here listening to you, and I'm saying to myself, wow, because she used to have her own talk show, and it was on Facebook or something like, I don't want to say talk show, but a little Morgan's Minutes. And then I think about myself. I mean, I'm going towards 60, but myself at her age, I had absolutely no positive affirmations. So to your point, everything about me was negative. Oh, you abused child. You're going to stay abused. Nobody wants you. It doesn't matter. And it takes, first of all, it takes God, the power of God, the Holy Spirit, to really pierce, and I like to say pierce the veil of negative thinking.
It's true. It is so true. It's true.
It's really true.
People just repeat what they've been through. So if your parents didn't hear anything positive, right? Or if your parents, that's how they spoke in their house, right? Then they're just repeating that's all they knew. Whereas now you as an adult have to now rebuild your thought life. So that child, I mean, thank God for what their parents are doing, because who know? And then the other thing is culturally, as a culture,
Mhm.
we've been taught not to be high-minded,
Yes.
not to do, to be very meek, not realizing you can still be confident and meek. You can still be confident and humble. So I think, and it's also being around certain people that you don't even realize that you may intimidate, right?
Yeah.
And so you have to judge when they're giving you counsel, from what seat are they giving it? Is it from a seat of intimidation? Is it genuine? All of those things.
So how did you navigate, Jessica, self-love and acceptance in your life?
So I would say, so therapy really helped me be more self-aware. I think for me, that's what it was. It was being more self-aware, and then being honest, because I think
Mm.
especially as a Black woman, we're taught to be the strong Black woman. And I had to learn that my vulnerability made me even stronger. And being honest with how I felt and having conversations, and being honest with myself, like you can keep up appearances with other people and look great and be home crying your eyes out,
Right.
and really having that conversation. But I think therapy made me more aware of what I was doing. And then I had to do the work, because people can keep telling you whatever they tell you or showing you, but you have to commit to doing the work.
Yeah.
And so I started doing the work.
Wow. So you're also a life coach, right?
Yeah.
What made you transition into becoming a life coach?
So I guess it's always been something I've done, but not defined.
Hmm.
Passionate. When I was younger, I like mentored, but you don't realize what you're doing. And so for me, uh, I did a lot of work with young people. And so in it, we got the certification. It just made sense for me to go get certification for that. And as I started to do some of that work with coaching with them, I started doing it with my friends and with adults and with even pastors and leaders, and really helping them. Because as a coach, you're not, as a therapist, they're trying to figure out, how did you get here? As a coach, we're saying, you're here, let's go here, let's go further.
Right.
And so for me, it's really pushing people into their goals. And I just love seeing people win. So really walking beside them. And a lot of times, it's not that we don't want to do it, we just don't have the support, or we just don't know how to, or we don't have the accountability. And so for me, I think of it as an honor that people would be that vulnerable, because it takes a level of vulnerability, to share whatever it is, and then we walk through it. And so just to see people start, like I think of it as a midwife. So get to see people give birth to the very thing that they've thought about 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And all they needed was a supporter, a cheerleader, and some strategy.
It's so true. Your book is, wow, I can't wait. But your book invites readers, right, Jessica, to reflect on their worth and their potential. So
Yes.
within the book, could you kind of share some of the exercises or practices from your book to help individuals tap into that? That can you kind of share with us?
Yes. So in one of the chapters, I'm trying to remember which one. One of the chapters, I asked, like, what would your life look like if you really believed in yourself?
Mm.
And then we reflect. We take a moment to pause, and then
Mhm.
I ask, what came up for you? Like, what did you see when you took that pause? We've also talked about, like, um, there's a chapter, which is probably one of my favorite chapters, talking about I'm in process, right?
Mm.
In it, in talking about process, we talk about what are some things that you have to move forward in.
Okay.
Again, so the book, how it's laid out, it's like a narrative, maybe like 2
Mhm.
pages, 3 pages, and then it gives some self-reflection questions, so that
Oh,
you're not just reading, like,
yes.
but you're actually taking time to write. And people don't realize how much it takes to put pen to paper. It gives you a moment to really sit in stillness, and to be able to actively engage in, like, your being, and realize, okay, this is what I need to do.
Yeah.
And then being able to reference it.
I love that because I find that when I write, like if I looked at something, Jessica, that I wrote a couple of years ago and to where I am today, it's like,
Oh,
wow, okay. Your thought, right? You go, wow, I thought that. My belief was like that. And then when I look at the woman, not that I've arrived, that's not what I mean, but when I look at where I am today, I'm so grateful for the opportunity. I love what you said, to have read something and then I can write about it. Because
yeah.
now when I write, the writing gives off a different sound, a different meaning. And I thank you for that. I thank you for the ability within your book that people can actually do that, because I like that workbook kind of reading work. I like that. I just think that's valuable. But guess what? To my guests, we also, I want to mention, Jessica, we have Bree with us from Antigua, and she is Go Jess, sending lots of love.
Bree.
So, wow, that's beautiful. We're going to take a commercial break. Thank you for joining us, Kim and Bree, tonight. We're going to come back with more from Jessica Toussaint as she talks about her book that she has written. And I can't wait to get my own copy. But Jessica, I know it's going to be powerful. And guess what? I know it's going to make a difference. But we'll be right back after this commercial break.
The quality of being the only one of its kind. That's the definition of uniqueness. Uniqueness. What does that mean to you? To me, it's when people are totally different from one another. The world sometimes says in order to fit in, we must all be the same. But if we're all the same, nothing new will come out of life. Imagine coming to school every day and sitting next to another you. This may sound like a great and fun idea, but in the long run, we all chase the same dreams, have the same beliefs, and nothing new will come out of life. Being called unique isn't always said on a positive note. Sometimes your uniqueness may not be what you want to be remembered by. Everyone has their own story to tell, whether good or bad. The story we need to tell is what makes us unique. As Ryan Buchanan once said, you can't blend in when you were born to stand out. That means instead of trying to be like others, we should celebrate our differences. Being an individual is what creates the world. Let's celebrate our uniqueness and show ourselves to the world. By that, I mean stay true to yourself.
Welcome back to Real Talk with Jean Price. We've been having such a great discussion with my guest tonight who's talking about her book. But let me invite her to come back. Listen, you got to get a book. You see it up on the screen. Jessica Toussaint, come back and join us. But thank you for putting up on the screen to my technicians. She has an amazing book. It's available on Amazon. It's called Baby, You Got This. You want to get your copy. You want to go through it as a journey. It's an amazing book. I'm telling you, you're going to want to do it. But Jessica, come on back. I want to ask the question. This is so good. How did you balance the desire of self-improvement with self-acceptance?
That's good.
Improvement, acceptance.
So I think, in doing it, I think learning to give myself grace, because so I could go through an exercise and no, you shouldn't have said that, right? And no, but then giving myself grace, okay, go apologize. Or maybe so a great example is I was learning to say no, because I used to say yes to everything. Okay. And so in the beginning, my no was like a little harsh. So I had to learn, okay, well, maybe there's another way to say it, or maybe you should have said it this way. But because it was like me accepting my power, right? And so now if I say no, I'm like, okay, the answer is just no. Before I felt like I had to say no because of X, Y, Z, because of this and that. And if someone didn't respond to it correctly, I would get like, really? And so I think balancing self-acceptance, right, would be giving myself grace and learning that I'm not going to get it all the way together every day. And that as long as I'm on this earth, there is work to be done, right? We've never arrived to anything. And so just learning to see the growth with one step in front of the other. And I would say the greatest way was in my weight loss journey. So I haven't arrived yet, but I've lost 100 pounds. And so doing that, for me, I'd have bad days, and then I'd be like, get on the scale, and that scale would give me accountability. Okay, we're going to start again. And again, it took the grace, because when I was very punitive, it would hurt myself and go back to old habits, and as we talked about earlier, it's important what you're saying to yourself instead of speaking negativity, And so it took a journey. It's still a journey, but it's accepting it, being honest with myself and even with others.
Yeah. You such a key word, grace. And I don't think we use it enough to ourselves and also with others, because it's so easy again to be hard on yourself, and sometimes when you're dealing with other people, and it makes you remember that God gave us grace,
Mhm.
right? So it causes you to have grace towards someone else. And I think I went through a season where that was my word. Like everything was grace, 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 because you
It's
go
true.
through seasons of life, right? Where you really do depend on that mercy and that grace. You know what I'm saying? So I love that word. That's probably something that has kept me and helped me for throughout a season. I want to go a little further and talk about culture, right? Why in our culture do we emphasize the external appearance rather than the internal appearance? And internal, remember, what's going on inside of us, we understand comes out. But a lot of times we focus on, and I think you alluded to, we can pretend on the
Mhm.
outside, but it's the internal that's the one that's suffering. So why is it in our culture do we put such emphasis on that? The external.
Well, so it reminds me of, growing up, a lot of households in our culture, they would say, don't say what happens here, right? If whatever happened in the house is what happened. So I think culturally, we've been taught to be silent. And a lot of us, even as a people, we've gone through things. We've shown up to be resilient, but internally, we've lived with the devastation of those actions. So I think it's really something perpetual, right? Our family did it, our parents did it, so we've done it. So there's some things we have to unlearn, and that's a behavior we have to unlearn. Realizing because Uncle Bobby had the issue, but guess what? He coped with alcohol. That's how alcoholism walked into the family. So it's still seen, but it shows up in different factors. It might be a family member that has issues with mental health or drug abuse or promiscuity. It still shows up.
Yes.
Instead of addressing we address the symptom. We talk about, oh, they're always smoking. Oh, they're this.
Yeah.
But we don't address what is actually taking place.
Yeah.
And uh, that requires having some courage and
Yeah.
having tough conversations.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's easier just to brush it over under a rug.
Yeah, but to your point, but it never goes away. We mentioned mentorship as you have been growing in this journey. Do you find there are young ladies that are striving to be like you?
Yeah, I would say so. I think my biggest joy, my biggest sentiment has been like a lot. There are a lot of women I've worked with, mentored through the years, and I got to watch them. So getting the book, when I posted it, I didn't even share it with them. They're like, "Oh, I just read the book. Oh, it spoke to me." So to me, for me, it matters most what they have to say because they've gotten to watch me walk in front. They watched my walk. They've watched, so to see them respond to it. Yeah, and I think that's our responsibility. Our responsibility is to pave it forward with one another.
Yeah.
And for me, I think, even though I feel like I'm getting older, my old self, I feel like I want them to learn from me, my mistakes or the things, so that they
Yeah.
stand on my shoulders, so they go further than I do.
Yeah, it's true. And even as you're talking, you say getting older. All right, you could probably be my daughter. I'm just saying. And you're right. I stood on the shoulders of somebody, and then women will now stand on my shoulders.
Yes.
So we just keep climbing. Oftentimes, my husband used this analogy about the crab in the pot. When a crab starts to get out of pot, there's another crab to pull them back down. Why is that the mindset of us as women? If we see you climbing or going there, why do we want to pull each other back down?
Well, I think some of it is envy, right? But when it's rooted in I should be there because a lot of us have the potential. We just won't do it. What I think the thing that really gets, even for me, grinds me. Sometimes you're on social media and you're like, oh my God. And you're like, well, this is not this. Well, God is like, well, you should have been doing it. I gave you the gift. And what happens is when other people see people doing it, it either it invigorates them to want to do it themselves, right? If they can do it, I can do it. Or it causes them to want to pull them down out of their own trauma, their own fears, their own insecurities. I don't think it's malicious. I just think it shows their state of mind.
Right, absolutely. So as we are talking tonight, right, we have this wonderful book that you've written, which is phenomenal. I want to go back and talk about, was there ever a time that you wanted to give up? before you got to this book, and when you wanted to give up, what did you do about it?
So I do talk about it in the book. I don't remember which one. Maybe I'm in process. So for me, I started writing some of this back in the pandemic. It was more of my intimate conversations with God, or even within myself, right? And then I put it on a shelf, didn't touch it. And one of my good friends, again, it's important to have accountability and community.
Yeah.
I was going through process of transitioning at the end of the year, and saying, this was one of my goals. Well, when are you going to do it? And I remember going through it and saying, okay, let me pick it back up. And let me start to actually put the pen to paper. Let me edit. And in doing it, though, I realized how much ourselves. So for years, I've been like, put out that book, sis, put out that book. Then I said, oh, this is what they go through. And then having to push past it. And I learned it was me. Like if that's what it is. The chapter's called You Are the Obstacle.
Okay.
So I am the obstacle, because I would say the book was ready and I'd be like, well, let's proof it again. Let's do this. Let's do that. And I realized through accountability, I was self-sabotaging.
I was
right?
just thinking of that. Yes, I get it.
Literally, the person, and my friend just kept saying, well, it's already done. You already got it edited. What do you just hit the button? And so for me, that's when one of my chapters, I went back and wrote, you are the obstacle. And so realizing that there are gifts and talents inside of us, and it's not even about us, it's about other people, And so when we hold back, we're not just holding back for ourselves, but we don't know who can benefit from our story, or who can benefit from a resource.
Yes.
So that's how it happened.
No, that is so good. You mentioned when we started the beginning of tonight's talk, how I was on Channel 12 News, and I'm not for myself. I just want to bring up a point because it's so good when you said sometimes we have to realize it's not about us. It's really for other people, right? The harvest is ripe, but the laborers are few. That's what the word says. And I got a notification, Jessica, after I did that segment on the news about a young lady who said their mom saw the segment.
Mm-hmm.
And she said her mom went through a traumatic experience in her life. And she, based on the segment she saw, is when she revealed the trauma.
Wow.
And I said, and that was believe it or not, that was my response. I went, wow, like that. So again, it was never, honestly, it's not about me, but it's about the people that are waiting to be set free, to share, to let it go, to disclose. And that's why I'm so glad about your book, because you're letting us know as women, we really we have this. You know what I'm saying? We really can conquer. We can be victorious. We can be triumphant. We can be everything that the word of God also tells us that we can be. So your book to me has layers of winning.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Those layers. Okay, I'm here. Now I can take the next step. For you yourself, here you are right now. You have this book. What's your next goal?
So my next goal, by the end of the year or early next year, I want to, I already started working on another book. And so I don't want to, so I think the biggest thing I've learned, I was talking to a friend, is being consistent. So a lot of us start strong. We start these initiatives, these ideas, these events, but we're not consistent. And so I guess my biggest goal, I'm probably saying it out loud for the first time, I was thinking about this the other driving today, is I want to be more consistent in the things that God tells me, echoing his heart, whether it's through an event, which we plan to do something at the end of the year, whether it's through showing up on social media. I really want to be consistent. So that's my goal in providing that, and to be able to share my story authentically. And for me, I think when you do something, it gives other people permission to do the same. And so we got to model it. Like a kid, we tell a kid, do this, it's not, and it doesn't work with this generation. Do as I say, not as I do. We have to actually model it. And so I want to be a model for it, not the bar for it, but to be a model, an example, to liberate other people to tell their story.
That's so beautiful. One last thing before we close tonight, Jessica, what do you hope your readers take away from your book?
So I hope they take, I hope, my real hope is that it propels them to take action. A lot of times we hear messages, we read books, but we do nothing with that information. and that they would take action, whether it's starting to work out, whether it's applying for another job, whatever it is, that they would really see who God's called them to be. And they would be so enamored by it that they would take action to become it even further.
Wow. Again, to my viewing audience, can we put Jessica's book back on the screen? I want everybody take a look. It's on Amazon, and this book is going to be you want to follow the journey to the book that Jessica Toussaint has written, and it's the title of the book is called Baby, You Got This. And to women or whoever men that are watching, sometimes you need to be reminded in life that we really can conquer those things that we are meant to conquer. I want to thank Jessica for being on our show tonight. You have definitely given us some great tools. What are your final words you would like to say to our viewing audience before we close tonight?
So I would like to say, embrace your story, stop holding it back, and living in shame. Your story is the evidence of your strength, of your resiliency. And then I want to end with, baby, you got this.
Oh my God, I love that. To our viewing audience, thank you, Kim, for being on, and thank you, Bree. It's a pleasure to meet you all the way from Antigua. I want to thank Jessica again. Jessica, thank you. I look forward to following you and seeing the different paths that you're going to be taking throughout 24 and into 2025. We're going to be right here on Real Talk with Jean Price. We invite you to come back again, share with us your journey and what you are doing. Listen, Jessica's on to something that you don't want to miss what she has in store. Thank you again for watching us tonight on Real Talk with Jean Price. Have a good night.